Welcome to the Confused Millennial Podcast. I'm Rachel, your host and the blogger behind theconfusedmillennial.com. And this is a podcast all about helping you navigate this whole adulting thing. We cover everything from personal growth, spirituality, wellness, as well as just your general adulting topics like your career and money, mindsets, and all of that good stuff. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm so happy you decided to join me. And I'm going to kick off this week's episode by first of all just saying thank you guys for the overwhelming response to last week's episode with Al on navigating difficult family dynamics. We recorded that episode back in July, and I had honestly forgot what was in it. I just knew that when she and I had hopped on to record, we stumbled into this conversation, and I was like, we have to hit record. We'll end up making 2 episodes. One, which was the episode she was previously on. I believe that was episode 22, I think. And then the episode that you guys heard last week. And so many of you guys reached out to me with emails and DMs, sharing your own experiences with your moms, sharing how you were crying through the episode. And I can't thank you guys enough. It means so much that you guys choose to spend your time, that you guys subscribe and share the podcast, but it means so much that you guys reached out with your own experiences. Right after I had listened back to that episode on Monday morning myself, I started to get a little panicky, like maybe I shouldn't have posted it because it was a little bit more vulnerable than I think I had been and opened up about with my own family. I've always talked around it on the blog. And immediately I went and checked my email as I was started to beat myself up, and I had gotten one message from you. I got one email from you guys. And then the next day, I guess my own mom had heard the episode, and she sent me some text messages that were not necessarily from a place of love, I guess you could say. If you follow me on Insta stories, you saw some of that and you heard that. And right after I got the first in that series of text messages, I opened up my email again and I had another email from one of you, and really just divine timing. I can't thank you guys enough because, this is really about healing. The intention is never to hurt or to harm anyone. It's always about how are we healing the collective. I don't know if any of you guys watched The Good Place. Highly recommend. You can watch the first 2 seasons on Netflix. It's with Kristen Bell. But in the second season, they kind of go through this philosophical debate of, do you sacrifice one person to heal the many? And I don't believe anything that Al and I talked about was sacrificing anyone. It was just stating the facts of our experience and what we're doing to, heal those experiences so that we're not continuing to perpetuate that trauma and harm and abuse into the future generations. And that was really our intention in sharing all of that with you guys, which is to, sacrifice more ourselves, not so much anything that we were talking about with anyone else, but sacrifice ourselves, because when we share those things, we do open ourselves up to criticism, to judgment and things like that, so that we could hopefully let you guys heal in your own way, and we can really push breaking these cycles of the old way of doing things. So that's just my long-winded way of saying thank you. And we really just appreciate it. And with this week's episode, we're switching gears a little bit, although it's kind of always in the same vein of just how we're growing on the inside. And we have Caty Pasternak joining us. Caty is the host of Sexy Soul Radio. She's also a women's leadership coach. She really focuses on helping women create lives that their souls are just turned on and lit up by. She uses intuitive development, quantum physics, hypnotherapy, neuroscience, and esoteric foundations to do the work she does. As you guys all hear in this episode, she's a beast. We go into the different levels of meditation and all of that good stuff. In this episode, we cover a lot of ground. So we start off by talking about the divine feminine, what that looks like, what the wounded feminine looks like, And then we kind of shift gears kind of in the same vein, but we start to talk about our money mindsets and money messages that are holding us back and how we can work through those different things. And we close out the episode by talking about the science of manifestation and different ways that you guys can really grow your manifestation practice, get a deeper understanding of how it works, why it maybe hasn't been working for you up to this point, and how you can kind of use all of the information that we had talked about up to that point to really enhance your careers, your businesses, your relationships, and just your quality of life overall. So without further ado, I am going to jump into the interview with Caty. All right. Welcome to the show, Caty.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. You host such an interesting podcast where you cover so many different topics kind of in this spirituality, woo-woo, businessy world of tying it all together. Like, I think you did a Divine Feminine series, which I'd love to jump into a little bit. I would love it if we could hop into money mindset. And then I had somebody on the audience recently request some more topics about quantum jumping and quantum leaping and stuff like that. So we're going to try to cover all of that in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into it.
Where do you want to jump off into first?
What was the first thing? Now I just forgot.
Divine Feminine. So let's jump off there. So for you, what does the Divine Feminine mean? Because here you are as this leadership coach that really does work with women. And I think we're in an interesting stage right now where we're learning both how to be strong and how to be feminine, and what does all of that end up looking like?
Yes. I love that conversation so much too, because I think a lot of women that are naturally attracted to or find their way into spirituality and personal growth, they eventually learn that's like, oh, I've been really masculine and like I'm not really feminine. That's kind of the collective conversation. And so they go into healing the feminine and they get really sweet and compassionate and delicate and flowy and gracy. And it's beautiful. And when they move a little bit too far in that terrain, the next step is like, what does that fierce feminine, powerful feminine look like? And to your point, it's like, how do we be strong and connected to our heart? And I think that's a conversation for me with women and leaders, because they're afraid to be bossy or bitchy, or they're afraid to be really masculine or perceived that way. So it's like a new paradigm that we're all creating with each other to be like, what does it look like for us to be like really fierce in our own message, because we're coming from our heart and our intuition. And so all leadership starts with self. But I think that really tapping into the way that we operate our own lives is really important. It's like, okay, are you staying committed to your goals and working towards your vision and like staying focused and treating yourself kindly, speaking to yourself nicely, like allowing yourself to dance and move with grace? Like it all starts with you, and that's what you then like eventually end up leading others through. So I think it's a personal conversation, but it's like, where in your life do you feel out of balance, and where do you want to add in a little bit more structure or a little bit more of the flow and the grace? And can you have those both harmonize so it feels a little bit explosive at times, to be that powerful force? Because that's what we need now, is more powerful women that are really speaking from their heart and making change.
So would you say that that's ultimately, in your opinion, what the Divine Feminine boils down to, like speaking your truth and from a place of love, if you will?
Yeah, I think that the Divine Feminine has all these faces, right? Which is why like I kind of went into archetypes. Expresses itself in so many different ways. But for me and my pull towards it, which I think we all have a different pull towards, me, it's speaking my voice and being in my heart and like leading powerfully from that place. I think a lot of other women really resonate with like the mother role and being like the compassionate, like I think it's really whatever our desire is, and that pull towards what does that feminine expression look like. And knowing that we can shift faces, which is the best piece. It's like, maybe you're in full leadership mode and like you're roaring like a tiger. And then at night you're like, like licking your cub, and face, like you get to play in that. But it's like, whenever the wounded feminine comes in, where it's like, okay, now I'm not speaking my voice. Now I'm being harsh with my partner or my family. That's when it's the opportunity to rise to like, what is the Divine Feminine expression of me right now?
Yeah. Oh, I want to go into that. Like, what are some of the examples of how people are, like, how the wounded feminine is manifesting, like playing out in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is the damsel in distress. And being like wanting someone to take care of you and acting out a little bit of victim mentality. And a lot of people can't see it until they're called out on it. But, you know, especially entrepreneurs, if they're like trying to build their business and they're like, nothing is working. This is so hard. Like, why aren't the results coming? And it's like this complaining energy. And underneath it is like, someone come and save me. Someone look at me. Someone validate me. That is the damsel in distress that's waiting for the knight in shining armor. And that's the opportunity to be like, oh, hold up, wait, I can really support myself through that. That's one way. And then I say the other core way would be the disconnected, more of a bossy, bitchy type of woman who is perceived that way because she's disconnected from her heart. It's usually not intentional, but it's like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm really passionate about this. No one's responding to me. No one's clicking with me. And it's because she's out of her heart, because she's afraid.
Yeah.
Because heart was like blocked off in some circumstance. So I think those are the two biggest ones that we have.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I feel like we're going to talk about manifesting later on, but those are like the two things that we say play out most often in movies and stuff like that. And I think that we forget that so much of the content that we're taking in, we allow to expand ourselves and end up integrating into who we are and the relationships that we're having and things like that. You know, I love that you touched on the damsel in distress having to do with the victim mentality, because you guys listened to last week's episode with Al where we talked about navigating difficult family dynamics. You know, like we both had very difficult relationships with our moms. And then if you guys saw the aftermath of what happened with that episode on my Insta story, where essentially my mom never follows anything I've ever posted. Nothing, like does not read the blog, does not listen to this podcast. She happened to read that and she went into this damsel in distress archetype, and it was totally playing the victim and was like, I think it's best for everyone if you consider me dead. I'm like, okay. And I posted that not because I was hurt and I needed like pity and all this other type of stuff. You know, I posted that because that is what the victim mentality looks like. It's pushing other people away so that we don't have to take responsibility of how did we get to this place? Like, what is happening? We don't have to look at ourselves. We don't have to own our stuff. And so many times we have that victim mentality playing out in so many different areas of our life, whether it's work, personal relationships, getting cut off on the road, you know, that woe is me is just constantly happening for so many people. So I love that whole like expression of the wounded feminine. What are like your favorite kind of like daily practices and tips for healing that?
I think it depends on which way you're coming from of the spectrum.
Yeah.
If you are more of the damsel in distress that, you know, is taken over by emotions and not really getting where you want to go and not staying focused, then it's about implementing like actual structures around your day that feel good to you, that maybe it's like you don't have to have like a to-do list or whatever, but like you have a piece of time where you have an expectation that you set for yourself. And when you hit that, you really celebrate yourself so you can build that new foundation. Because people that say like, I'm not committed, I never get anything done, I procrastinate, that's a lot of wounded feminine. It's like, guess what? You get to change that. You just have to build a new habit of being. For us on the other side of the spectrum, which is what I came into, was more of like the hustle, the push, the masculine. It's like, where can we incorporate spaces of time in our day that are for being and surrendering? And it's like, maybe you going for a walk, or maybe you just like stretching on the ground and not being distracted mentally, because that's what that masculine wants to do. It wants to get to the other place. The feminine's about like being here right now. And even though that sounds easy, it's not. Like, it's really not, for someone to unwork that conditioning to be like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to hit my goal. Like, there's a lot of discomfort that arises in that. But I think it's about making the commitment. Like, even if it starts with an hour a day, to do something different to get you closer to where you want to be on that spectrum. And that's how you build a new habit and create new results.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, because I think so many people that jump into this personal growth and personal development and spirituality thing, you know, we can read all the books, we can listen to all the podcasts, but unless you're actually going through and like integrating this into your daily life, creating that buffer time, or realizing when you're speaking harm against yourself, and anytime you're speaking badly about somebody else, that's really a judgment that you have on yourself, a part of you that's wounded and you haven't healed yet, you know. You take all of this information and then you have to do this like daily inventory of like, not self-flagellating and like punishing yourself because you didn't live up to this like perfect ideal standard, but just saying, okay, these are the wins, and okay, I saw I was triggered here a little bit more today. Let me go ahead and see how I can prevent that trigger from happening again, or not be as reactionary, or not go into the old pattern of being. Because too often I think we end up on autopilot for the old way we've been doing things.
Totally. And, I think people look at personal growth sometimes. It's like, oh, well, now I'm listening to the podcast, so this is when I work. Or now I'm at the workshop. Or now I'm with my coach. Like, that's the work. Like, life is the work. Like, trainer is the work. And when it's crazy, because when you start to prioritize that personal growth, literally more than external work, everything starts to shift. But you have to be so mindful of what's going down in that moment and be able to shift yourself. And that's like the energetic alchemy piece. But it's like anyone that's resonating with this, that's like, yeah, shit, I'm not doing the work. Like, literally, it's carve an hour to do the work. Like, if you literally just say, like, it's an hour where I'm going to actually observe my thoughts, where I'm going to see what's coming up for me and shift. Because although we all know, like, oh yeah, I'm in control of my thoughts and I change my thoughts, how many people are actually doing that?
Yeah. Well, and how many people are actually doing that? And how many people surround themselves with yes men and women in their life? Men and their friends and coworkers or employees that won't actually call them out when they're playing into these old maladaptive, harmful patterns and habits. Like, I don't want friends in my life that are going to let me act like an asshole and just kind of like be like, oh, that's Rachel, and make an excuse for me. They're not doing me any favors. I want people to be like, hey, you messed up here, or like this happened. And then maybe it is my fault, because it certainly is sometimes, but maybe it's just like something that they were projecting onto me that wasn't my intention. And that was just how they were, they had perceived that event differently because of the reality they're living in. And then at least we can work through it together and like help each other with growth. Because like that, at the end of the day, that's a big part of the human experience, is how we're helping one another.
Totally. It's huge. And yeah, you have to surround yourself with people that are playing the game. Because it is the game. It's like nothing to be triggered or offended by. It's like, oh, this is like my programming. Gotta like shift my programming right now. But you need people that are opted in.
Yeah. You need people that are opted in, and also realizing like, it's that, because we are talking about the wounded woman, that doesn't mean that you take on all of the blame just because somebody's giving you feedback. I just want to throw that caveat out there too, because we all are living in our unique realities, and sometimes we're in a personal hell that we're just like gonna scapegoat onto everybody else because we don't want to acknowledge that.
Yes.
So with kind of all of this, I feel like this is a good transition, because let's talk about money and money mindsets. And I mean, the victim mentality plays out with money all the time. Wounds play out with money all the time. So first of all, like, how would you kind of describe, well, I'm just going to like toss the ball over to you. What is money mindset to you? What are the most common ones you face? All that type of stuff.
Yeah. So for me, it's interesting because it's never about the money. It's about the mindset, period. It's like if you live in scarcity and you live in victim, that's going to be reflected in your financial reality. And I think what keeps people back from doing the money mindset work is because it's not like you do money mindset work and then you have all the money. You do money mindset work to open the door for you to be responsible for what you do and serve in this world. And so many people, they are so afraid of like hard work and putting themselves out there and doing things that scare them and moving into fear. And all of that is like ground level personal development. It's not about the money. It's like, are you willing to be responsible for your life and declare what it is that you want to create and make shit happen and move worlds? That's like that personal leadership where it's like, oh, it's not like I say money affirmations and it falls on my fucking door. It's like living an empowered life to be like, I create everything in my life. Can I take that responsibility? Because that's what the conversation is. So money mindset, like huge blocks are obviously scarcity, which we've all been conditioned to believe, like that money's not here, like there's never enough. And for me, it's like, we have to look at all the other reasonings outside of the ones that we're training ourselves to focus on. Because like where we trained ourselves to focus on the money that's not in the bank account, or like the raise that isn't coming, or the clients that aren't showing up, like that is where our trained focus is. And whatever we focus on expands. Focus is how we manifest. So it's like in those moments, can you retrain yourself to focus on the abundance in nature, to focus on the fact that money's being created in every single moment? Like something simple. So clients that I work with that are like coaches and entrepreneurs that are like, this client didn't sign with me, or no one answered to my sales pitch, like whatever. It's like, did you forget there's like 8 billion people in the world? That's actual logic, but we've been conditioned to think illogically. So it's like taking that conversation of scarcity and being like, okay, I need to reroute myself when that shit comes up. And that takes consistency, and it takes work. You have to be with yourself when you're spending money, when you're receiving money, when money comes up in conversation, like notice where your body goes. Most of our bodies go to stress whenever it's like, oh, I got to invest in myself, or like, oh no, my money didn't come in, or oh, now I got my money, I have to go pay my bills. And it's like this, the body's in stress. And if your body, which is your subconscious mind, has a negative and stressful association with money, it's never going to be motivated to create more of it. And that's when it's like, you have a negative relationship with money, you have to address it to make more. Like you have to, because you won't be motivated, even though people are like, I want more money, of course, but it's like, prove it, because you're stressed out all the time over money. Why would any part of you want to create more of that?
It's so that's true.
Yeah, the scarcity and the fear, I think, is, and then like the personal responsibility thing to be like, I can create whatever it is that I want. It's a total paradigm shift to be like, I'm actually unlimited, and really stretch yourself to see examples of other people doing that in your own life, of how you can be a quantum creator by deciding that you're going to make that and take the responsibility to follow through.
What do you mean by quantum creator?
So when I say quantum creator, I'm like, you are engaging in the quantum field of creation, which is like the deepest sense of presence. So like meditation for me, it's like, it's not like you're escaping. It's like you're focusing on what's actually here. Everything else is the illusion. And so eventually you get to the space, which is the only thing. It's the quantum field. And so when you go into a deep enough state of meditation and you experience that oneness, that everything, that's when you see the idea of you end result. This is what's happening. And it's like being a quantum creator is being more convicted in that creation than anything physical. And people, I think, miss out on the magic of this work because they just think it's bullshit, and they don't actually try it. They're just like, nah, it's bullshit. But really, if you just like played in that space to be like, what if this were more real and it were already done, and you showed up accordingly, and then that thing manifested, your entire life would be like transformed. That's why I say manifestation is the most important thing, because it's like, it's not about getting, it's about removing fear from your life. As soon as you experience it, you're like, oh, fuck, this works. What? Changes everything.
It does. It does. I love that you said all of that too, because I think so often, I like that you said earlier, the whole thing about it's not just saying a bunch of money affirmations, because I think too often, like, manifestation got a bad rap, law of attraction, all of that stuff, because people think like, oh, if I just say that I'm going to get $5,000 in the check next week, it'll eventually happen. And so they say it and they say it and they say it and nothing happens. You know, if your energy isn't there and you're telling yourself these affirmations, your nervous system is going to respond to the lie that you're telling yourself. Affirmations can resonate in your body as lies if you do not actually believe in what you're saying. And that is going to amplify the energy of fear, amplify the energy of scarcity. And too often, I think that really gets overlooked when doing this type of work for a lot of people.
Totally. And that's like the key thing. It's like, it's focus. The only reason that was even a thing of saying like repeat this over and over again, it's because it's building habitual focus. But like you just said, if your energy is not in alignment to the focus, then you're creating whatever the energy is in focus to. So it's like your mental focus is not the creator, the energetic focus is, because that's what's driving action. So it's like if you say like, I have $10,000 in the bank, and you're like, I have $10,000 in the bank, and you say that and you're focused on it and you're like, I'm excited about this, like it's coming, then your actions reflect that, because then that's congruency versus you being like, I have 10,000, I have 10,000, I have 10,000, no, I don't. Like, and your body's figuring out you're not going to take that action, you're going to respond in fear, and that's what creates the result. So the affirmations are good when they're done with the emotional and energetic awareness of like, what's coming up for me?
Mm-hmm.
Judging it, being like, wow, look at my programming around this. Look at how much fear comes up in me. Look how much scarcity I live with. Because it's not like the affirmation created it. It just brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to see that, to be like, that's where my work is.
Yes, totally. Because I think a lot of times, you know, we forget that when we were kids, we were listening to everything our parents said about money, and that was all getting into our subconscious about it. You know, if you had parents that would fight over money, then you probably have this old money message at somewhere in you that says, I don't want a lot of money because it's going to create problems with people I love. You know, there's all of those different types of things that end up coming up. On the flip side, if you're somebody that was raised like money's always going to easily come to me and find me, you know, you randomly get, I mean, this happens because I'm one of those people, that's how I was raised. Like I started working when I was 13. And so I always knew if I wanted something, like I could go, I knew how to make money and money would come to me easily. And I would get like a random $300 checks in the mail, like from here, you got this returned money because you overpaid for this. I'm like, oh, hey, thanks. And like it does start to show up. But it has to be really part of your actual belief system, not just, you know, a fortune cookie that you stare at every day on your fridge.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, with kind of like the money messages stuff and with all of this type of stuff, because I feel like with victim mentality, with money, with all of these different things, they all come back to this place of fear that we all have inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, what would be like, how do you go through your day and self-audit when fearful thoughts or fear-based thoughts are coming out or actions?
Yeah. I have like an actual process like that like really supports me. So, the first thing for me when any type of trigger or emotional reaction comes up is the body, because it's all happening in the body. I'm a very big, like energetic believer in that. So I always move the body first, because it's like, we can try to, if we sit with fear, it just gets heavier and heavier. Like fear is an energy in the body. So it's always like movement, whether that's like working out or like dance, just something to actually acknowledge that it's there and try to clear a little bit of it. So your mind isn't like paralyzed with the energy and actually has like space to think clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Then I will move into like, okay, like what is the fear? And really getting clear with like, what is the story? Because sometimes it's like, I'm afraid. It's like, why though? Like really like, what's the fear? And keep moving into it till you get to that core reason as to why. And sometimes for people, it's fear of success. You know, it's like things that they want to even think of, but doing the work to get into that place. And then moving into like, is this fear or is this my intuition? I think that's a big piece for people, where, especially when they're more energetically tuned in, to be like, something doesn't feel right about whatever this next decision is or whatever this is. Like if it's a investment or leaving my job or doing this, and they're like, I don't know if this is right or wrong, whatever that conversation is in their head. So it's like, let's look at it from fear and intuition. And for me, asking yourself, if this were to work out the way that I wanted it to, would I still want it? So it's like, if you want to leave your job, for example, if you were to leave your job and everything was amazing and incredible and you loved it, would you still want to do that? If it's your intuition and it would be like, no, I actually kind of like my job and I don't really know if I would want that life there. Like there's something about that I'm not really aligned with. Then you know it's your intuition. If you say like, would I want that? And you're like, yes, I'd fucking want that. Then the only thing that's in the problem is like your fear. So I think like having people getting clear on like their truth instead of trying to navigate like chaos of emotions is important. So you're like, okay, that's intuition. There's a fear response. And then conversing with fear to be like, okay, I get you. I see why you're afraid to make that leap. Is there anything that I can do to support you? So the job example is perfect. When I left my job, I was terrified of money like everyone is, right? And I decided, I was like, I'm going to honor my fear with money, and I'm going to make sure that I have $30,000 saved before I make that leap. I'm going to do this. I'm going to like honor my fear and make a contract with myself to be like, if I don't hit that, I'm not going to do it. Like until I hit that, that's when everything's going to happen. And you can make other agreements too, to be like, if it's a fear of success or fear that other people will judge me if I do something, it's like, when I start to feel that happening, I'm going to check in with you and we're going to have conversations with those people to make sure that like our relationships are flourishing and amazing. Like doing something to ease the tension instead of being like, fuck you fear. Like sometimes fuck you fear works, but often moving into that place of like where like teamwork is really supportive and then moving right into action. Because as soon as the action goes, the fear usually clears. But that's a little process that I like to take myself through that's helpful, because sometimes it's like we're running from conditioning, we're running from story. Like it's like you got to get clear with what's going on before you just say like, fuck it, I'll do it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I like that you kind of rephrase it in a more positive way, because the question I always ask is like, what's the worst that's going to happen if I were to do this? And I like how it's like, okay, well, if what the best case scenario plays out, how would I feel about that?
Yeah, amazing too.
Yeah. So like that, there's two sides.
For the worst case too, like really, what's the worst case scenario? Like, and getting clear, like, oh, it's not as bad as I like think it's going to be. And that's helpful too. Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, all of these, whatever you choose, there's no right and wrong into it. It's just a different part of your evolution. You know, you are going to, however everything plays out, it's exactly as you need it to play out to learn that lesson. Like, I'm a wholehearted believer there are no bad relationships. There are no bad experiences in our life, because there was something for us to learn, to take away, to find meaning in. And so whatever, like at the end of the day, when you boil it down to that, like it kind of just seems silly to freak out about some of the things that we freak out about on a day-to-day basis.
Our minds lead us into.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I get emails with people freaking out over spending, you know, $275. And I'm like, I just don't have time, like, to help you work through all this. That right there, the fact that you're freaking out over spending $275 is why you need to spend $275 so that we can go through that, you know? And so it's just so interesting to me how little we take a moment to pause and say like, okay, this is coming up. This feels uncomfortable in my body. What do I need to look at? Like, how do I need to move this through so I can think clearly about it, to use your first step? Because it's so powerful when we can really become the commander of our own life, the co-creator of it all.
Totally. And it's like every time that we give in to fear, we just live a more disempowering life.
Yes.
And that's why it's so much harder for people to make leaps and make big decisions, because it's like, you know, based on results, you've always given into fear. And so that builds an identity. And so that's okay, because the choice is always now. Do you want to start making steps towards a new identity, which is like the question for everyone. It's like, do I want to be someone that continues to give in to fear? Because what is that doing for my life?
Yes. I mean, one of the things that I always like, it just punches me in the gut when I hear people say it, which is, I'm a finished product and I'm okay with that. And I'm like, then like, why don't you like, why? How? Like, no, can be too painful. It's too fragile that like, we shouldn't be settling for that. You know, how are we bettering ourselves? How are we actually moving through these moments? How are we deconditioning? How are we moving towards our wholest truth? Because that's why we're all here at the end of the day.
Yeah. Some people just want to opt out.
Yeah. So with all that kind of said, you know, you talked about meditation, you talked about this quantum stuff, and I want to go more into, just kind of like the science of manifestation and creating something in the quantum field and all of this type of stuff.
Yes. I think one of my favorite things ever. So I think it would be helpful for people to know that like this was not something that I like intended to come across. It was something that like naturally evolved. Visualization was never a practice for me. I just started meditating because I was depressed, anxious, binge eater, out of control. Meditation was one of those things that people recommended. So it was like, okay, I'll do anything. Someone fix me. Meditation became like a practice, just like 20 minutes a day type of thing. And then naturally, like I started to get like high self downloads and images and just like seeing myself like in a white dress, like flowy. And I was like, who the fuck is this? That was like not my style, like at all. And eventually I started realizing how much better I felt when I was engaging with that image of myself and really like feeling into the energy of her. And it was this natural thing. And I started to learn about visualization and how it's making change in the brain. And so the science behind that is like, our minds are always creating images. We think in images. So we have like flashes of images all the time. When you start to reprogram the image you have of yourself, which is like self-image psychology, you naturally act differently. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you think of yourself, you have an image. And if you're someone who's like insecure, you have a very insecure image. Or you're someone who's like struggles with money, like that's a reflection that you would see in the image of yourself of like, I can't get my shit together, nothing happens for me, like whatever. But when you intentionally reprogram another image, that is you being abundant and really wealthy and happy and successful and healthy and doing different things, your subconscious mind starts to relate as you as being that person. And so you take new actions. So you can think about this. Think about someone in your life who you're like, they're not even attractive, but they're like the most confident person. Mm-hmm. Like they'll go, they'll ask every girl out, like whatever. In their mind, they are attractive. It's because they see themselves that way. So anything that we want to change, we have to change the image that we have in our mind. So that's like our thoughts create things. Whatever we create in our mind is what creates our reality. The issue with visualization that people have experienced in the past is that they don't get to a deep enough state of meditation to actually reprogram something new because the limiting beliefs that they're operating under are like anchoring onto it. Mm-hmm. So for anyone that's practiced visualization that has maybe like, done 5 minutes of like meditation and then went right into it, you can get a good sensation from it and you'll be like, okay, that's like nice, but you don't really believe it. Mm-hmm. And like your point earlier, it's like nothing's going to change until you get the belief. Mm-hmm. So reprogramming belief requires you to like go deeper into reality outside of limiting beliefs, which we can think of as like an ascension into this like cosmic field that's really like honing in on the truth. But when you go into a deeper state of meditation, it's like you start in like those beta wave states, which are really crazy out of control. You move into alpha, which is like calm, relaxed. But when you get into like a theta wave state, it's very, very deep and you're disconnected from your body. So it's like, that's when you feel like you're in this one field. And I'm sure deep meditators that are listening to, or meditators in general, have experienced that. We're like, yeah, there was something different. There's mm-hmm. something different about that state. In that state, that is the creative state. It's like you're in the womb of the universe. Mm-hmm. And so you plant the image of you and the life that you want in there. So your subconscious is just like feeding it. It's literally like you're in the womb. So it's like all of your conditioning is not even related anymore. You're disconnected. You can totally emotionally engage with what you're creating because the thoughts and the limiting stories are no longer there. Mm-hmm. So that is a state where it's like, see yourself, like you have to see your body because it's about the self-image. It's not like I see a car and I get a car. That's a piece of it's about the self-image because that's what changes what you attract. So when you do that in that state, in that really, really deep state, and you're intentional about it and you're engaging all the emotional energy into it, you're changing your subconscious. Until you have the emotional engagement, you don't change anything. That's how we get emotionally programmed. Mm-hmm. Is when we have trauma, when we have shit, it's emotion. So we need the emotional engagement in that state. And then it's like, once we come out of that place, we are literally in the energy of our future self. Mm-hmm. From that place, we move into action that we normally wouldn't have taken before. We receive ideas and inspirations that we were not even open to before. And we naturally attract new circumstances because to us, we're the type of person that thing happens to. So if I were to see myself, like this is what I used to do when I was building my coaching business, I'd see myself being so successful as a coach, having all these clients before I had any. Mm-hmm. But when I left the visualization in that deeper state, I literally left and I was like, I'm a fucking boss. Like I'm a boss. Clients would come and I'd be like, of course, because I'm a boss. Mm-hmm. But it's because the self-image was shifted in that deeper state where I could actually believe in it and change my focus and actually believe in it. So then I can move into being like, I'm going to create clients. This is all happening, like da-da-da, all because I went into a deep enough state to disengage. That's the quantum field. That's the womb space. That's creative space. And I think that conversation needs to be had more because it's not just like, that's a womb of the universe, like woo woo. But it's like, no, your brain waves are actually reflecting that you're changing something in your brain when you go to that deeper state. And you will notice, like, if you consistently do, everything fucking changes. And it's like magic. But getting to that state is the work. And that's why I've done so much. Like, I'm a hypnotherapist and I train people to go into that, because it's like, once you get there, you're like, whoa. And I think that's like the new edge of where our personal growth is going to. It's about actual personal growth instead of being like, do this, do this. It's like, you need to learn how to get into your own state to make change. And that's like where we can change anything. We can change the way that we show up to relationships. We can change our money story. We can change everything that we attract in that state.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, I've done meditations like that, and you can literally, after coming out of those meditations, the amount of things that would just come into my head that would support who I was in those visualizations. Like I talked about this, I think, in episode 14 of the podcast when Eric and I were introing Shaman Durek. You know, when I first met him, like he's like, tell me what you saw. And like, it wasn't even like a crazy deep like meditation or anything like that, but that theta state was there. And, you know, I told him everything I saw, and then he's like, really? That's all you saw? And he told me everything that I didn't even tell him that I saw. And then for like weeks after that, I would be doing different things, and I would literally have to pick up voice notes on my phone while I was like on my spin bike, because I was just getting like these really clear, like, this is the stream of consciousness that you need to like put into an article, or this is the stream of consciousness that you need to put into a speech that you're working on, whatever that ends up being. It all starts to manifest in these other moments of our life.
Yes. That is so huge. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that too, just especially for like creators listening. Like, that is the gateway to what you want your career to be, to what you want your expression to be. Like, open your channel.
Yes. So I want to go into, I don't even know what this question is going to end up being, so bear with me because I might be rambling to find what the question is. So I think a lot of the times we get caught up in like, I'm really good at a lot of different things, especially as millennials today. You know, it's really easy to teach ourselves skills. We all have varied passions and interests, where we're like, I could be a coach. I could be a content creator. I could, you know, be a mom. I could be, I don't know, I'm just pulling stuff from my life and what I do every day. But like all these different things. And I think sometimes when we try to figure out where we should invest our time and our energy, it can end up paralyzing us or getting really kind of confusing of how to navigate these different types of things. And typically the way I've kind of navigated it, and I'm curious if you have a better way, this might be the question, is I tend to go where the synchronicities are easily flowing. Now, whether or not those are most aligned with like this highest vision I have of my future, I mean, it's too soon to tell. The future's unfolding. So what would you say to people that are either A, trying to force a revenue stream or a career path, but that they are passionate about, they do enjoy, but the synchronicities aren't flowing as much there? Is it something that they need to be going into like a theta meditation for, to like integrate that into their subconscious? Or is it that there's just a higher purpose and that's more of a distraction of something that they've already mastered in a past life maybe?
Oh, that's such a good question.
I'm like, I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I just like, that's where my head was going when you were talking.
Yes, that's such a good question. So I love that conversation, because for me, like, manifestation is like, it's right here. And then our purpose and our path is something that we can't even see. So I think that we do know intuitively when we're trying to force something. I mean, I've done this in my business. I'm like, I want to do this. And then I'll literally try to manifest it, like visualize it. And I have that like gut knowing that's like, no, this is not the, so it's like listening to that. And to your point, like, the soul path, like, we have no idea what pieces are coming together. And I think that's the disservice at that conversation around, like, what is the thing you're going to do? What is your purpose? What is that? Because then we're just like, oh my God, I need one thing and I need to make all efforts towards that one thing, instead of being like, what is my intuition guiding me towards right now? And trust that that path is always going to lead, because we can all look back and be like, wow, how did I get, I mean, like I look at my path, I was like, I was a personal trainer. I did like all those pieces though, like eventually connected to here. And even though a year ago I had this one vision for myself in business, that's totally changed. Like everything is always changing. So for me, it's always like, what is here right now that I can get myself like heart desire behind instead of like, I should do this. Like this should be the next step, and just be like, what am I excited about? And like you said, I think that the excitement is what breeds the synchronicities and things flowing in that direction. And maybe not though. Maybe sometimes it feels hard, but are you still excited?
Yeah.
Like, does it still feel like that? But you have to be willing to drop into that because some things might not make sense. Like, I'll give you an example. Like me, like my business has grown so fast. And right now my intuition is like, take space. My mind is like, no, like go in, like think, like scale it. But now it's like, nope. But it's like you have to listen and trust that the path is always working in your favor.
It's true. I think it's so often like, you know, when I hear you say like take space and you're like in the back of my mind, it's like, no. You know, the gut reaction is like, but what if you're telling yourself to take space because it's really out of fear? And then you like spiral out into that whole thing.
Oh my God. That's literally the conversation that I've been having. And that's why it requires space to see through that. But the same thing. I'm like, what if I'm just sabotaging myself? What if I can't even see what I'm doing? And for me, that's like meditation has to be there because otherwise I drown in my thoughts all day. Like I have to like actually drop in to be like, what's here for me? Like what's here for me? And for me in that conversation of space, it's like, I'm moving into a new paradigm that's like, I don't have to work hard in order to make money and to be worthy. And that's like my new edge because I could work hard, even though I'm doing like spiritual work, my purpose work, it was still hard work. And so now it's like, like, are you going to let source like actually support you? Do you believe that you're safe? And it's like a spiritual growth moment. Who's to say how long it lasts? But that's what feels like truth for me. And it's like me, I've like set aside my ego like many times in the last like couple of years to be like, I know where that thing wants to take me and that's great. But I know that the deepest fulfillment is when I follow the soul lessons along the way, regardless of what that looks like externally. It doesn't matter. It's all about the feeling that we're creating to being like, I'm actually leaning into what I need to learn right now.
I love that too. I like that you said this is like the soul lesson for that moment because what I was going to say was, you know, when you hear that voice in the back of your head saying like take space and stuff like that, for me, in my experience, that's like when you're being guided by like your spirit guides and things like that. And when you start to justify and go into rationalizations of what if this, what if that, I can't let go of control, that is like your conditioning that you need to kind of unlearn, you know. And for me, it always comes down to asking that question of like, are these thoughts coming from a place of love? Like, are they, because when you really filter them through that, you realize how much of it is just conditioning, is fear, is usually other people's stuff because they thought they couldn't take a break. They thought they couldn't give themselves space because if they did, they'd no longer be relevant. They wouldn't succeed, whatever. And so you internalize that somehow as like, well, that's the standard of living and standard of business and standard of life. And I'm like, I became an entrepreneur because I want flexibility and freedom. Like that was what money is energy like that. I'll always have enough. It will always come to me. It will always find me. But flexibility and freedom are two things that an employer could never give me.
Yes.
And that's where I'm like, why, if I want to work 16 hours one day, I'm going to do it because I feel the excitement to. And if I want to work 1 hour one day, I'm going to do that because that's what I feel excited to do that day. And
totally.
In sinking into that trust, I think, you know, we make it complicated, but it doesn't always need to be as uncomfortable as that is.
Yes. And I think, you know, it goes to the point of like knowing yourself and your conditioning, right? So for like you and like it's like, all right, so we know how to get shit done.
Yeah.
So that is our like fallback mechanism is like, I'm always going to be able to work. I'm always going to be able to hustle. I'm always going to be able to get something done. That's my mode of operation. So we know that when we're faced with like a fear moment, that is what naturally wants to come up is like, no, just work. Like, no, you're sabotaging yourself. Come on, keep going. On the other hand, if there's someone who doesn't follow through with things, who doesn't really work hard and they get the insight, create space, look at that. is that sabotaging you? Like, it's like it's like, what is the sabotager? The one that's keeping you from making any progress, or is it the one that's keeping you from joy? So it's like we both have those things, like the hard work hustle. It's like we're missing joy, and the other one, it's like not getting where you want to go. So it's like know yourself to know which one you're playing into.
Yeah. And usually it's whichever choice, usually not in all cases, it's the one that's more uncomfortable for you.
Yes.
Is the choice. Because that's what we're here. Like we all have, I think we have past lives and different soul lessons that we're trying to learn. And usually we're learning those soul lessons by making the uncomfortable decision and leaning into that discomfort multiple times until it becomes comfortable. Because that's what we're here to do this time around. So
yes,
I love that. So we're almost out of time here. Is there anything else you want to add to all of this? Any other tidbits you want to drop for everybody?
I think what we covered is really, really great. And I just invite everyone to like listen back to this episode. Like there were a lot of gems in here, and just like take note of something that resonated to you. And like just create space to sift through it with yourself. Like when you actually take the space to become your own personal developer instead of like listening to outside, but like be your personal developer. And even like, well, I don't know what that looks like. Like, I don't really know if I can do, like, just try.
Yeah.
Just try to like work through your thoughts, work through your conditioning. Ask yourself, like, why am I going towards what I'm going towards? Is it because of what I want? It's because I'm like afraid of the other thing. Like, just make space for yourself. I think that's what we all need, is to not like consume and just be, and like decide what are we going to create from this place of knowing, and then move into that place.
Yes, I love that. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes. So my two biggest places, I'd say, are my podcast, Sexy Soul Radio on iTunes, and then Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. I love stories, and that's at Caty Pasternak.
Awesome. And so if you guys like this episode, be sure to screenshot it, share it on your Insta stories, tag at Caty Pasternak, tag at The Confused Millennial, so we can see it. We can say hi. Yeah. We can share it, share like that you guys are sharing it, all that good stuff. And yeah, until next week, thank you, Caty, so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. This is great.
All right, you guys, I hope that you picked up a lot of new skills, tools, ideas for how to enhance your own manifestation practice, how to move more into alignment for yourselves. I am going to go ahead and drop a few resources to this episode in the show notes for it. So you guys can find all the show notes at theconfusedmillennial.com/category/podcast. Or if you go to theconfusedmillennial.com/podcast, there's a link to all the show notes. I'm going to drop a YouTube video I did on the past about talking to your partner about money, which it goes into, even if you don't have a partner, if you're single, it goes into 5 steps for really understanding your money messages and things like that you've gotten over time. A few other blog posts that I've done on manifestation, some book recommendations, all that good stuff. So if you want to dive deeper into this subject, I will link that all again on theconfusedmillennial.com/podcast, and then just navigate over to the show notes, and you should be able to find this episode's show notes pretty easily from there. Or I'll link it in the little description box in your player below. But I don't know if that always works. So I'm just like giving you 2 ways to get to that information in case you need it. And again, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, leave 5 stars. That really helps, A, making sure that you guys never miss an episode, and B, it just helps staying on the iTunes charts and keeping us discoverable with other people. And with all of that, I will leave you guys to have an awesome week and talk to you guys soon.